Welcome to Pint with Seaniebee, coming to you from my home city of Dublin. Yesterday and the day before, Inspire Fest 18 took place, which I attended one of the days, and it was magnificent conference. And one of the people I met there who actually cartooned me without my knowledge, and I was on Twitter trying to find her, and then she had actually drawn me. So it's a bit of fate that we're possibly together. I'm here with one of the world's leading cartoonists, Liza Donnelly. She is a cartoonist for The New Yorker and CBS News, a pioneer of originator of digital live drawing, which we'll hear about a bit later. She's a writer and public speaker, and she believes in changing the world through humour. What can be wrong with that? Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Sean. It's great
Donnelly
to meet you.
Donnelly is a very Irish name, you know. I presume you have some of us in you somewhere, have you?
I do. About 4 generations ago, a man named Peter Donnelly came over from Monaghan County.
Okay, so that would have been probably famine.
No, actually, it's before that.
Before the famine.
So maybe 5 generations.
Okay. And is this your first time here?
It is. I'm embarrassed. I love it.
Don't get fooled by the weather. You've had great weather.
I know.
This is our summer. It lasts about 4 days, and next week it'll be raining and dull.
I know. I don't mind rain at all.
Yeah. So how did you enjoy the conference?
It was great.
Yeah.
I was drawing everybody. That's one of the when I met the organizer, Anne, I offered to draw the conference.
Yeah. And
I asked her if I could speak as well, and she was like, "Oh yes, of course." So I drew almost every speaker. I missed a few because I was getting ready to speak myself.
Yeah.
But they were fascinating. Some of them quite young women, very inspiring. What was I doing at 14?
I didn't know it was a kind of a women's conference.
Not really. I wouldn't say that.
Well, but it is kind of like I was going. It's great that there's all these women speakers because I thought it was, but it is inspiring women to greatness as our diversity, right? There's a diversity theme running through it.
Yes, but I think
tech particularly.
Yeah. But they're trying to break the mold of conferences and make at least 50% of the speakers be women. And the speakers did not all speak about women's topics.
They didn't. Sorry, that's
whatever a woman's topic is, I don't know. But no, it's a conference that happens to be peopled by a lot of women.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the F word, feminism. I've seen some of your stuff online about whether you're uncomfortable or not so uncomfortable with the feminist word being attached to you. You talk about the fact that you're a cartoonist who happens to be a woman, but you did break the glass ceiling of female cartoonists. There were very few. There are now more.
There are more. Mm-hmm.
And you've been doing it since 1979. So tell me about how you see that.
Well, I've always been a feminist since I can remember. And I grew up in a time during the Civil Rights era and the women's movement and Watergate down in Washington, D.C., and I wanted to do something with my cartoons. I wanted to help. I was a shy kid, but I really wanted to speak through my cartoons. I didn't think at that time that included women's rights, so I just was drawing whatever I felt was important and what I wanted to draw and make people laugh. It wasn't until a little bit later that I realized I could use my skills to draw about women's rights globally.
But I love as well, one of your speeches you said that you were giving you were putting women into cartoons that didn't necessarily need to have a woman in them, right? So every cartoon has a guy with 4 fingers or whatever, but you were putting a woman in. And it didn't matter who was speaking.
Right.
And
when I started out, I think in many cases when I started out, art, generally speaking, every man was a man. And if you put a woman speaking in a cartoon or in fiction, it had to do with women's issues like the stereotypic raising children, cooking, shopping, all that stuff. But now you can put a woman speaking in it, and it doesn't make you think that it's a woman speaking. It's just somebody speaking. It's a person. And that's why I say I'm a cartoonist who happens to be a woman. It's not because I don't believe in feminism. It's quite the contrary. But I don't think we should categorize women all the same. We don't all draw the same. We don't all think the same. We're just people.
You've talked a lot. You're born in Washington, and you talked a lot about your mother, particularly the influence she had on you by recognizing that you at an early age had this interest and feeding it and letting you draw. You said you drew all the time when you were a little girl.
Yeah.
And also Thurber was a big influence for you as well. And he had a crazy mother who was funny as well. There was some apocryphal stories of her I read once, which was that she went, this is very funny, she went to a faith healing conference and pretended she was crippled, and then just got up and went, I can walk!
I have heard that. That's great.
But is it? I do a lot of these talks with people, and we talk about early childhood, and quite a lot of them are people who've bucked a trend, who've had to face down a parent for trying to drive them in one direction, or a teacher or something like that. And you had this great, you seem to have had this great nurture about your parents just letting you run with it.
Yeah, I think my parents did. They were really supportive. I had a good childhood, although I think some things that drove me to be funny, in part because, okay, here's two things. My sister was a textbook juvenile delinquent. So I ended up being the good girl, and that's why I wanted to make my mother happy. I wanted to make her smile, because that was my role in the family. And then the other thing is that society didn't really think women were funny. There's still people that don't. So I was trying to buck that trend. I was trying to push back against that, because when I found out, when it was brought to my attention that there weren't many women cartoonists, I think my interest was piqued. My competitive edge. I was already drawing cartoons.
Yeah.
But I thought,
I saw some of your early ones where you were, just you made the comment of just drawing relatives or people that you saw when you went to Italy, just drawing all these very crazy sort of people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about your work. There's just this beautiful little nuanced devices. I mean, there's always a little dog looking on, or your famous one about the slut. Or I want to be, I don't know whether I want to be a good girl or a slut. There's a unicorn on the wall.
Oh, you're right.
I'm kind of going, I'm picking all these little things out now that I see them. Let me be contentious here about the female comedian. I mean, I used to do some stand-up comedy myself. There is a theory that says that women don't have to be funny. Okay, there's a biological theory that says males who are ugly and smelly attract women by making them laugh. Okay, and women don't attract males necessarily by making them laugh. In fact, quite a lot of males get very kind of weird about fun. I love being with a woman who's funny, who's funnier than me. In fact, my girlfriend, who you meet later, you'll get a great kick out of. But a lot of men don't like that. It kind of emasculates them a bit. So there's this biological theory, and if you look at comedians, the sorts of comedians that have been pioneers, like the Joan Rivers or the Roseannes of this world, or even Bamford, there's a lot of very strong, loud, shouting over women, or shouting over men kind of women. There's a sort of the sort of tomboy type. I'm being contentious here deliberately. Tell me what you think about that.
Oh, you've packed a lot into that statement.
Well, the idea that, okay.
No, I understand what you're saying. But there's a lot can be attributed to biology, and I don't discount that. But I think we've gone past a lot of biology. We can get past that, and don't have to keep saying women are the fairer sex. They need to have doors open for them and stuff like that. It's not. Don't need to do that. I mean, that's kind of a bad example, but. The women that you say are on stage, like Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers, and yes, they're loud. It's because the tradition of humor has been like that. It's like cartoons. I've written about this. Once you open the door to different types of humor, you get more diversity. So I've been pushing back against loud humor all my life. You can make a strong statement by being quiet. You can really say a lot. And I've done stand-up myself, and I've tried to be a quiet stand-up.
Right.
It's tough.
It is.
There are, like Stephen Wright is an example of a quiet stand-up. Those are examples, but and women have had a difficult time. I used to interview women comedians I wrote for Forbes for a while. I'm fascinated by women comedians because I just want to know how they got past all those barriers. It's harder. For me, I can just sit at my desk and push back, but to be standing up there in front of a crowd full of people that are expecting you to fail, oh my God. Yeah.
No, I mean it's a part of sort of life that I'm very glad is changing. We've had a tumultuous year, especially as we talked before when I met you yesterday in Ireland, the referendum, and we've had Me Too and stuff like that. How does it? You talk often about you're sitting in the background, looking at culture, looking at the way things change. How is the whole Me Too thing? How have you sort of viewed that and
Well, it's horrific. At the outset, it's horrific, but it's a good thing because we're talking about it. Women are sharing their stories, and we're now seeing what pain and what difficulties they've been going through. That some of us knew. On one, we're aware of how hard it's been, but we didn't know the extent of it. Really, I didn't really have.
Same here. I mean, when it all started happening, I actually put a piece on my Facebook about it, and I just. Now, before I pressed send, I was going, okay, is there anybody out there that, when I was younger or whatever, because I've got all these friends on Facebook that could. And I was saying, I'd like to know if there was anybody who I might have offended or whatever.
See,
and I'm a cheeky guy. I always hopefully land on the right side of cheeky, but maybe sometimes I didn't. And somebody wrote to me. We went up, and an hour later, a friend of mine in London wrote to me and said, "How can you write that after what you did to me?" And I went, "What?" And apparently there was some night we were at, it was another, she actually said, "Well, you actually defended, you was some rude friend he wasn't a friend of mine, he's a friend of mine, but she felt very upset, and she didn't do it, But I was glad to hear that, and we had a big long back and forth about it. And,
good.
And that solved something, but she was busy going, maybe for years thinking about that, just anytime
so now
Sean Boyle
know.
comes to mind, it's that asshole night that we had out,
Well, I do feel a little sorry for men in that regard, that in that you guys are trying to understand what it all means, and so are we too.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about, and again, this may be an area you don't want to talk about, and if so, we won't. Just from a personal point of view, talking to a cartoonist, I want to talk about the whole Je suis Charlie, and you've been an ambassador and an envoy for peace. For you've been to Israel, Palestine. Frame your views on what happened with the Jutland press first of all, and then the Charlie thing. I mean, again, maybe it's me, and my view is, I think Islam needs to get over the fact that people can draw Muhammad, right? I think that the word is aniconism or something. It's a refusal to paint religious figures, and it's seen as so insulting that will kill somebody.
Yeah.
Where do you land on that?
Well, everybody should have the right to say or draw what they want to say or draw. Freedom of speech, expression.
Okay.
It's hard for me to talk about because you probably read what I've said, and I wrote an article for the New York Times right after the Charlie Hebdo deaths. That was an incredible day in part because of what happened. It was horrible. It was shocking and really upsetting, but the world community of cartoonists came together, and we were all writing each other all day long, sharing our thoughts and feelings and creating drawings about it. There was just an outpouring of drawings by everybody. Unfortunately, with the internet, it makes freedom of expression complicated, I think, because you're going to offend somebody at some point. It's going to get out. It's going to be sent over to somebody. I think that's what happened with the Danish cartoon controversy. Well, it was at the beginning of the internet, and extremist forces used that contest. It was a contest of, I don't know if your listeners know about it.
So the Gilans press in 2005, yes, had 12 cartoons in a contest. A lot of people decided not to do it, and a lot of people didn't want to do it because they were attached to other newspapers. This controversy was that they drew pictures of Muhammad, or versions of it, and it went nuts, and they were burning magazines and everything in the street. You correct me if I've got any of this wrong.
Didn't happen right away, though. I mean,
No.
the contest happened, and then I think the extremists got a hold of the cartoons and used them to inflame people.
The Danes called it the biggest international incident they've had since before time or whatever. And then on January the 7th, 2015, a French magazine that was known for caricature and known for satire called Charlie Hebdo got attacked by acclaimed. 12 people were killed, most of them cartoonists, and 11 injured. On the 11th of January, 3 million people demonstrated around the world. My feeling when that happened, I was totally shocked. As I told you, some very good friends who were cartoonists here, and yes, they were all part of the vernacular, but I felt that people walking down the street should have had the cartoons on their t-shirts, which is perhaps a bit inflammatory. And then you maybe the way to frame this is in your I mean, a lot of it came back to a front cover from November 2011 where they changed the name from Charlie Hebdo to Sharia Hebdo and said 100 lashes if you don't drive laughter. There's a picture of Muhammad.
It's a very typical French attitude. It's a tradition of being irreverent and making fun of everybody. Yeah. And so they're going to insult somebody somewhere along the line, and I think that's what happened with the extremists that killed them. And they don't care about the French tradition. They don't care about the fact that the French cartoonists make fun of Christians as well, and they do. So my personal feeling for me as a cartoonist is I want to be more careful.
Yes.
If people are going to die, and I don't think they should die, but if they're going to die, I personally don't think pushing back. There are other ways to say that you have freedom of expression. You don't need to just push at somebody deliberately.
The editor of, I think, Jesse Charlie said, we have to carry on until Islam has been rendered as banal as Catholicism. And, I was born a Catholic, hey presto, over in Ireland, but, I'm no longer believing in the teachings of Cathol, as I say. But, we have people like Damien Hirst doing Piss Christ, where he is like the crucifix dipped in urine and all this kind of stuff. And I wouldn't particularly buy it and put it on my mantelpiece. But at some point, the modern day, the court jester, the job of comedians, of artists or whatever, is to express but also warp and fracture culture and challenge it. I don't know where that we draw the line, if we say, okay, well, you can't draw Muhammad, well, then you can't draw this, you can't draw that, and it's very difficult. There's no solution to it, and again, we're not, you've got to tread carefully because it's only a very small section of Islam that went bananas over it, but do you think we're regressing on that path? I'm going to lead into Trump here.
I don't think we're regressing, no. If I understand what you're asking.
In other words, do you think that sort of thing is winning? Your style is much more kind of quiet and understated and reflective, I think. Rather than Charlie, you did a very beautiful one with the kids behind the American flag bars, which I really love. Do you think that the point of outrage about every single thing that you offend is starting to take over from the fact that...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, in fact, I kind of do. On the one hand, you don't want to normalize what's going on. You don't want to get used to what Trump's doing and what he's saying. But if you just keep ridiculing him over and over and over again, and you get numb to that, it becomes something that gets normalized. And I also think it gets people more divided, even more divided. The people that attack Trump are being labeled liberal elite still, and that's what got us into this problem, I think.
Right.
So we have to have the cartoonist still poking at, even though I just talked about not poking people, still exposing him for the things that he's doing. I try not to ridicule him as a person so much anymore. I did during the election. If there's something of his policies that piss me off, then I'll draw about that.
We have rise of identity politics and all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of outrage against against what's going on in universities as well, and any sort of thing that someone might take offense to can be shut down. We have the situation in Canada with the pronouns and all this kind of stuff. This is the sort of worrying area that I feel the world is going to, where I keep going back to the court jester won't be able to move for want of offending anybody. And when we get to that point, it's dangerous, because then you have checks and balances in journalism, and you have checks and balances in comedy and humour. Your line of, I want to change the world through humour. There will be times when people will need to cause offence. Most of humour is laughing at other people's misfortune in a roundabout way.
Is it really?
Well, going back to swinging a plank and missing and then hitting someone the other way around, we laugh at slapstick, but we also laugh at, a guy walks into the bar and something happens. It's not, we laugh at, it's not always terrible misfortune, but, someone walks into a door or,
But I don't know that I don't mean that a lot of humor is like that, and it's funny. But there's other ways to create humor, obviously. Yeah. And I wouldn't characterize humor as basically that, laughing at people's misfortune. It's...
Again, I'm trying to just, it's a catch-all statement, because it doesn't, but I think, observational humor, which I suppose is probably one of the cartoonists I really love is Looning from Australia. If you come across him, I'll send you some links to his work, but he's very tonally similar, because a lot of your stuff is kind of reflective and kind of, even the one that you did for the Irish, I'll put a link to this in the podcast, the one you just quickly drew when you heard that Ireland voted a referendum.
It's not really a cartoon.
No, but it's lovely.
It's a drawing.
I showed it to my girlfriend who was campaigning for today, and she was just saying, she was nearly welling up. I don't know why, but but it's just the little, it's the faces
You
on
know,
the girls.
I got some pushback on Twitter from some people who are saying, why are you celebrating abortion? And I'm like, I didn't even answer them. But so, yeah, you're going to offend somebody.
A few episodes ago, so yeah, we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, you will offend somebody. But again, we did vote by a 2/3 to 1/3 majority in this case, and it was a vote for women. It was a vote for women's rights to their own, body autonomy.
Right, right.
You're also married to a cartoonist.
That's
How's
right.
that been?
That's been great, I have to say. It's not an easy business, so you have somebody to talk about.
Yeah. And I saw you don't show each other's cartoons.
Not really, not usually, no.
Right. That's been a really...
Very separate, because we were already established cartoonists when we met, and our styles are similar, our attitudes are similar, but you create something and you're really proud of it, and if you show it to your spouse, and he's a professional cartoonist, and he doesn't laugh or he doesn't smile even, then you're ruined. It's like, what? So. And
you have 2 kids, and they're both artists as well, right?
Not professionally, but they're both very good drawers, yeah.
Moving in that direction. What do you see then is the sort of, for yourself particularly, I wanted just to talk to you about this cartooning for peace. I didn't manage to find out an awful lot about it. Can you just talk a little bit about what you're doing there? That's all about.
It was started by the French cartoonist Jean Plantu, who is with Le Monde. And actually it happened, it came about immediately following the Danish cartoon controversy we were just talking about. There was an event at the United Nations in New York it was a week-long event called Unlearning Intolerance. Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General at the time, loves cartoons, so he wanted to put together a day of cartoons talking about it, because the controversy just had happened and it was still simmering and people were dying. And so they invited about 12 cartoonists around the globe, and they asked me to be a part of it, to talk about our work and to talk about the importance of cartoons. And from there, John created a foundation called Cartooning for Peace, and it's not like we're cartooning for peace. That's not really, it's not a literal thing. It's a membership. You have to apply to get in, and then you're part of a group of cartoonists who contribute cartoons to exhibits, to forums. You go and you sometimes are in debates to talk about cartoons and freedom of expression and other issues, global issues, political issues.
So one of the ones that you did do, you did visit Israel and Palestine. So that, again, that's must be a very difficult thing to do cartoons about, because
it is. I can't imagine living there.
Yeah.
I know a couple of Israeli cartoonists. I know some Palestinian cartoonists, and the ones that I know are sympathetic to both sides, and they're trying to walk that fine line. Being cartoonists, drawing about, being critical of Israel as an Israeli cartoonist must not be easy to do, and vice versa. So,
again, just going back to this point about you looking at the world and being, I think you've often said that you're an outsider looking at what happens, and you take trigger words or words that you've actually meant a few very beautifully in some of your work. Is your view of the world going forward optimistic or pessimistic?
Yeah, it is. I am. I think I'm an optimist, and I think people ask me this sometimes about cartoonists, and I've thought about it, and I think most of us are optimists. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. You can't really honestly believe a cartoon can change things, but you can hope.
Quite a lot of the ones that I know have Black Dog days. They're kind of down. They're shy, quiet.
Yeah.
Again, they don't like being in the public eye, but they tend to be so funny. And I'm kind of like, I'm probably there making too much noise and not being half as funny. You know what I mean? But there is this melancholy in cartooning that I love. That kind of it's almost like you're looking at the world from. Almost like as not a god, but like from space. It's, look at that poor person there. It's like no one else is paying them any attention. Sorry, I think you've gone too far in my analysis here. Go on.
No, I think we are. Most of us are outsiders, as you said. I mean, many of us started drawing cartoons as children because we felt like we didn't fit in.
Yeah. And
so it was our way to comment on what was going on that we weren't allowed in to. And I mean, I'm a privileged white woman, so it's not like I was an outsider in that regard. But maybe as a woman I was, and I was shy. I felt like I didn't fit in.
But some of the stories that you've told about, I think you went something like, did you go 2 years before the New Yorker bought a cartoon
Yes,
of you? How did you keep going? That 2 years is a long time. I mean, and you were doing quite a few a week, right?
Well, Sean, that's a good story with the New Yorker. There's people that tried longer than I did to get in. It's just, that's the way, it's the best place to be as a cartoon, for my kind of cartooning. And we all have stories like, well, I tried for 4 years, and so you knew that it was, if you kept trying, you might get in. And the other thing, I keep forgetting to mention this, is when you submit, every week, you submit like 6 drawings, and back in the day before the internet, you would drop them off at the magazine, and occasionally they would hold one. They'd just hold one. They'd tell you, we're holding this one for consideration. So it was encouragement. And you thought, well, I'm on the right track. I'm getting it.
Okay, so they wanted you to keep doing it.
Yeah.
The story when you first got your first one published, and they said, wait, he wants to see you. And
Yeah, no, I
to
was
the bathroom.
terrified. I went to the ladies' room, and I tried to catch my breath, and I was scared to death.
But there were 2 things that you did, and it's, again, you're very humble in the sense that you broke. You talk about it being a tiny little glass ceiling for cartoonists, which I can immediately picture a cartoon there.
Right.
But you did break a glass ceiling, and you also have this. Our conversation earlier about comedians and comedy and stuff like that was interesting. You've been doing this for 4 or 5 decades now. Do you look back on it with any sense of, well, I did my little bit, or do you feel still more work to be done? Do you have a view that you changed things, or do you just sort of go?
Well, I try. Well, one thing I can point to is that I've edited books about cartoonists who are women.
Yes.
And I wrote a book about the cartoonists at the New Yorker who are women, and there were women drawing there in 1925 when the magazine was founded. So that's interesting. And then after that book, I did a book of women, contemporary women who draw cartoons. After that came out, I was in the New Yorker offices on they call it the look day, when the editor will see you. And there was a young woman there, and she said, well, I saw your book, I read your book, and I thought, well, I can do that. Maybe I can do that. So in a way, I feel like I have helped some women feel, by modeling, that can be done. So I feel very happy about that. And now we have a woman who's our cartoon editor, and they're purposely, I've talked to David Remnick, the senior editor, they are working hard to find diversity. So it's interesting.
Well, there'll be links to Liza's books at the blurb of the podcast. One of the questions I ask most of my guests is what you would say to the shy little girl who was making her adults laugh if you had to go back.
I don't know.
I know, everyone hates this question, but it's kind of my trademark question.
All right,
repeat
it again.
So if you could go back and speak to the little shy girl and say something to her, what would it be that you were when you were young?
Oh, on the one hand, I think that her shyness was what made her do what she did, right? So just encourage her to keep drawing. But on the other hand, I feel like I wasted so much time being so quiet. Now you can't shut me up, and I'm talking all the time, and I can't wait to talk to groups and to do another cartoon about something. So I would tell her that your voice, your opinion is as valid as anybody else's. Because I think I doubted myself for 35, 40 years. I think women are often like that.
The other thing I just want you to touch on is your live drawing thing, which you kind of pioneered that yourself. And you were showing me yesterday how, because anytime I try and do anything with my phone, my finger, I just make a big mess of it. And I can't actually edit it. So at the conference,
abstract art.
At the conference yesterday, Liza on her phone was basically churning out cartoons, putting them on the internet. You've also been at the Oscars a couple of times. You've been at the Democratic Convention, and I guess with CBS News, they're asking you to do all these things. Did that just come to you via sort of osmosis, or
it was an accident in a way. I work mostly on my iPad, although I do draw my phone. I was drawing the State of the Union address, which every year is pretty dull, but I was drawing it, and then I tweeted out the drawings immediately, because this app I use, you can do that. And it struck a chord. I think the people, my followers on Twitter, loved it because it was different.
Yeah.
And it was visual, and it's bold. My drawings sometimes on the internet are bold and colorful. Yeah. It was a sharing thing with the audience, and I just kept doing it for my own enjoyment and for my talking to my friends on Twitter, because I love Twitter. And then people started hiring me to do it.
Yeah, suddenly it's like 7 million likes for that. When you did a band with the big suit. Brilliant.
Oh, yeah, thank you. That was... Yeah, he was. I was traveling, and I got into my hotel room, and I turned on CNN, and there was Obama giving a press conference, and he had a tan suit on. He never wears a tan suit. He was talking about ISIS, some serious stuff, and nobody online was saying anything about ISIS. They were just talking about, why is he wearing a tan suit? Anyway, that's the kind of thing I like to do.
A picture of him with a tiny head and a huge suit with all this stuff going. Yes, I know my suit's distracting.
But so the live drawing is like a new kind of visual journalism, and I like to draw what's going on wherever I am. I mean, I drew Dublin while I was here. I just
beautiful.
I need to come back because it's like I barely touched the surface.
But the stuff that you do, we were looking at this morning too.
Oh, thank you.
It was just like the one of the guys just walking down the road with the dog, or the little palace bar that you did. It was really just caught up. You know,
trying to capture the city.
We get a bit choked up. I don't know why it is, because I don't think I should be getting a bit teary or goosebumpy looking at your work, if you don't mind me saying. No, because I can't say why. I can't go. You know, I mean, when there's something that's very emotional and you get touched by a cartoon, which does happen. But yours are just so they're just sweet or something.
Well, actually, I one of the things I hated when I was drawing as a young person, like in college and whatnot, if somebody said to me, "Oh, that's cute," about my drawing,
nice.
I hate that.
Yeah, no one likes nice.
So I try to be. I do like my drawings to please people on one level, but then I try to say tough things on the other hand sometimes. So it's great because you draw people in with the pleasantness of the drawing, and then you sort of like hit them in the face with some kind of strong idea. That's what ideally on the political side I like to do.
Gloved fist.
Yeah.
Being an American, is there somebody coming out of the woodwork that's going to take down Trump? I'm now hearing he's going to get another term, which would be ridiculous. Well, I tell you why.
No, I know.
All the pensions are back, unemployment's down, and people's money is coming in again.
And the Republicans are not doing anything about him. They're just playing.
There should be a Democrat, and hope, I mean, with all due respect to Oprah, not Oprah Winfrey, maybe. But there needs to be someone coming out of the woodwork to take him down. There really isn't. I mean, I love, what do you call her from Massachusetts? Missing
Elizabeth
name.
Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. But, I mean, she's gone quiet.
She's too left, I'm afraid.
She's too left. She's gone quiet. I mean, where is the...
Bernie says he's going to run again, which I
Bernie's too old.
I know. I don't... Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, Bernie, if you're listening.
Ageist. Are you an ageist?
Sorry, I'm kidding. You're getting at it from all angles today.
No,
but shouldn't there be somebody that go, oh, that's going to be
there
the
will
person.
be. Where I guess you're right. We should start doing something now. But I think the midterms are a big deal coming up, and a lot of women are running for office. Okay. So I guess maybe we're relying too much on Mueller to take him down from with all the investigations. And I don't know if that's gonna. I mean, we're getting close.
You know what I like about the whole Mueller thing is he's like a silent assassin. He's just quietly taking down people, and the gap is closing, and Trump's there going, no, it's fine.
Exactly. You should see Sean's body language. He's doing it in these funny
Irish stands here, but it's getting closer, and he's saying nothing. It's it's kind of like the child catcher, chitty bang bang, coming after him, or something. So I don't know where that came from, but you know what I mean. Yeah, but maybe that happens. Maybe he does get taken down. We all in Ireland certainly hope he does. It's been bizarre. I spent 8 years in America, and I left when he got elected. I just couldn't believe it that he got elected. It was just nuts.
It was really shocking.
We're done, are we? I enjoyed it.
So did I.
What's the one question I should have asked you that didn't?
Oh my God. Do you have any pets? No. Well, we have cats.
Liza Donnelly, thank you so much for being on A Pint with Seaniebee. Keep changing the world through humour.
Seaniebee?
Seaniebee, yeah. Sean Boyle, Seaniebee. Everyone calls me Seaniebee.
Thank you, Seaniebee.
Thank you very
It was
much.
fun.
Look after yourself. Come back to Ireland and
I am.
draw us.
I'm going to come back next year. They invited me back,
Okay.
so I'll be
And that's
Inspire
probably-
Fest.
I really enjoyed yesterday. I'll try
Good.
to do that.
And can I come on your show again next year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If there's somebody that we can talk about, we're going to try and make President of America or something like that. We can change
Yeah,
the
let's.
world. Yeah.
Now that you've covered me, we can talk about other things.
Safe flight back.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.